There's all kinds of... What is it actually time, Yeah, you still...
Okay, we'll call the meeting of the Stratford Planning Commission to order at 7:01 p.m. We have all 5 of our regular members here, and Mr. Watson's also present. If he wishes, if you want to sit up with us, that's fine. First order of business is approval of the minutes of our May 17th, 2016 meeting. Mr. Vexey?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Motion to approve, Mr. Vexey. Ms. Petusky?
I would like to make a motion to amend the minutes.
Okay, well, let's, would you second the motion and then we can talk
Yes.
about amendments? Okay. Second by Ms. Petusky. Discussion. Go ahead.
Okay. Just 2 things that were mentioned by Dr. Robinson at the meeting that I think for future planning commissions might be important, and that's to add, she had mentioned that the schools are at capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I think she said that a couple of times, and I think that's important to note. And she also mentioned that the loss of 250 students would trigger looking at closing of schools. So it gives us kind of a number.
Okay, I have no objection to those. Does Mr. Vexey, are you okay with that? Okay, we'll take that as an amendment. Do you have that, Gail? Okay. Any further discussion on the minutes? If not, all in favor as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Okay, we have 3 zoning referrals, and I don't see anybody present to discuss them, so Jay, you're up on deck. Text amendment, item 2A, adding MA to the list of districts where restaurant/cafe liquor permits are allowed.
All right, so if you don't know why the text amendment is before us, there's currently an application before the Zoning Commission for the Short Beach restaurant facility. It was the former Parks and, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, the former Parks and Rec's office? The former Recreation office. I don't remember the date, but it received special case approval to convert the space into a restaurant to work in conjunction with the golf course. And at the time, there wasn't an applicant to go forward with a liquor application. Mm-hmm. So the special case was approved for the restaurant, but until that we had the town had a concrete tenant, the liquor application couldn't be applied for. At that time, I don't think anybody realized that the park was actually in an MA zone where, for whatever reason, restaurant liquor permit or cafe permits are not allowed in, or were not listed as a permitted use in the MA zone. So I've talked to a bunch of people as to why they thought maybe the restaurant, cafe, liquor permits weren't allowed in that zone. And I've heard a couple different answers. One was that they didn't want to have bars in some of these older industrial areas for workers coming off. They didn't want them lingering around in the industrial districts. The other was that it's just a possible oversight, that it wasn't added to that classification simply as an oversight. So they're currently looking to get a full restaurant liquor permit for that site, and that's about it. Anybody has any questions?
Mr. Semp?
Have they discussed at all the hours of operation of that restaurant? Because I think the last time that we approved this, we talked about trying to make sure that the place is shut down by, I don't know if we actually gave a time, but 9 o'clock seems like a reasonable time that the golf course should be shut down. Or do we want to make it when, does the golf course still get locked, the park itself at night by the police at a certain hour?
Miss?
So
He kind of answered it. It closes at 10 p.m., but as Mr. Ramkunis mentioned, they have changed the way the gates are done so that they can pretty much close off the park from the parking area of the golf course and the golf building.
And my
So
guess,
I guess the answer, do you have an answer what they're looking for as far as a time?
no, they haven't indicated any times, and it's my guess that a lot of those details will be flushed out during the zoning commission meeting. That's usually one of the first questions that the zoning commissioners will ask. What are your hours of operation? When you open, when you close? Where are people allowed to grab a drink and go sit on the patio? Are they allowed to grab a drink and go out on the golf course? Things like that. Mm-hmm. So no.
Okay.
Question. You said there was a special case. Does that preclude doing an 824 review by this board? I mean, it is a change to the park. The park is town property, and I thought all renovations, major renovations, had to go through an 824 review.
I'm almost positive an 824 review was done prior to a zoning commission hearing. I believe that's what triggers it. I don't think they're allowed to go for a zoning or a special case without the 824. But I can check.
I think we may have done that in the last session. Maybe, Joe, do you remember? Yeah?
Both of us seem to remember that.
Okay, good. So then at least three of us have a vague recollection of having done that.
Well,
We can dig it up
it's
if you
just
want.
that before we vote on something like this, I think if an 824 review is supposed to be done on all town properties,
But we're
That's our
saying that
job
we
to
believe
do.
that it was done for that particular project.
your recollection is.
We can verify that.
I have a bad memory, so.
I don't think you were on the board.
No, I'm
No,
sure I
it was
wasn't.
previous, it was last term.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to, for discussion purposes, if you look at the document that was in your packet, this text amendment is actually not specific to Short Beach. You'll see in section 15.8, which is in front of you, the various types of liquor permits. And actually, as I read it here, if I'm almost not mistaken, the only one that's allowed in an MA district is a package store and the rarely used druggist permits. And this is to add it to Class D, which is restaurant permits and cafe permits, which may be located in a CA, CF, LBB, CNC, or OPD district, which are various. And what we're going to do is add it, the proposal is to add it into the MA district, which is the light industrial district. And this would be only the second place, the second type of permit allowable in that light industrial. I'm sorry, a hotel would also be in the MATH theater district, I guess.
To Mr. Hibansky, if we were to approve this, what other areas of town, which are MAs, would also be allowed to have restaurants and cafe permit?
What other areas of town? Mm-hmm. Well, obviously anything in MA district, but that's primarily in the growth district that you have down along Lordship, and then east, still learning the streets, east along Access and, Hathaway. Those are all kind of your MA light industrial districts. You do have some sporadically, because of the way Stratford does its, doesn't allow use variances, it actually promotes zone changes, which encourages spot zoning sometimes. So that's why you'll see some MAs here and there where you'll have an industrial use so that it's permitted to be in that place.
There's a little triangle there. Put in the middle.
Oh, is that Paradise Green? The triangle you're talking about?
It's not Paradise Green.
Oh, okay. So the greatest concentration is in the growth district that's mentioned in the Plan of Conservation and Development.
hard to tell. It might be the dock. We're
Hmm.
thinking maybe it's the dock. shopping.
Which would make sense.
Although that,
Well, no, because they already have restaurants in there.
yeah, because it's waterfront.
That's CA. The dock is CA.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Bexley?
clarification on that.
Certainly, sir.
We over here are not approving this. We are only making a suggestion of enforcing or not to the zoning commission.
Yes, so this, the motion that will be in order would be a referral back to the zoning commission with a favorable or unfavorable recommendation. So, and then I guess we should also make a statement on the consistency or lack of, depending on the case, with the conservation development plan.
If a 824 review was done, wouldn't that have told us that it was light industrial and wasn't zoned properly?
No.
Because, I mean, I would think it would be
No.
more logical for somebody to build a restaurant after they got the zoning changes they needed. And that restaurant's built. You know, everything's in there. It's a nice-looking kitchen. It seems to me that, you know, it's kind of like after the fact. And I think Mr. Silvahavy has had that come up before with the Perhala Farm area where they basically, well, you guys too, because you were here, you know, they basically changed the field area and redesigned the entrance to Bunnell, yeah. It just seems like we're doing things backwards.
We took a 5-10 break, be fine.
Sure.
All right, I think what we'll do here is I'm going to ask Mr. Hibansky to just take a run down to the office and see if we have that. We might as well answer these questions while we have a chance. So without objection, the commission will stand in recess subject to the call of the chair. Just to give you a chance to go grab that.
Sure.
Because they were changing all of the structure and locations and stuff out there. And we did the 824 because they were setting up to go out and go after somebody who handled this. Look for a restaurant.
Yeah.
Zoning commission. That's why I asked. With comment of a couple of comments.
Change, I don't know necessarily.
First,
the time
yeah.
gone into it that much. It probably would say what the zone is, what the part of it is. I think it's a great idea, necessarily, the different types of improvement. There's a variety of different ones, like restaurants. I don't know if anybody had looked at it there, because in theory, you could have set up a restaurant with beer.
I thought,
You know, it's not a necessary component necessarily.
rebuilt
They're looking for.
we do things, remove the maintenance, we put, they say, yes, set it up.
That's a dining type of establishment that doesn't serve.
That was in that.
So that's why I said, let's take a break. I'll grab the sheet, and then if it is the storage, then we can take a look and see what was in there. If it's not, I don't see what order it for.
Okay. Why don't you really discuss it? All right. The same thing over here. You have to be careful.
Couldn't get into the table.
Yeah, that's why
Favorable
I have a
recommendation.
go different than stop.
You know, someday I'm going to sit down on this,
Oh, yeah. And for how far that blew a gas.
this thing and bring it back to the fact that
And that,
we don't have that thing here. The only place where we have authority is when you get into land use and subdivision. enforcement officer. You know,
One commission blurs into the next one.
Oh, that's, yeah, right, the same thing here. Like zoning, and this one, they go to zoning appeals, and sometimes talking about this.
well, no, they talked about putting in a restaurant.
Save something at home.
Put in the
The
maintenance area and moved the entry,
something at home from day 4, saying that they,
the Gulf
with their
building.
marijuana,
But that was it.
they looked
The
at.
824 was because we're doing those things, so the town was doing
A while back, once in Milford, it's
it. And now, at that time, they set out a proposal, a request for proposal,
Yeah, we've gotten to a thing at work now where
you've got the response on
I just showed them me. I don't even
anything.
what panics was if you found out that you were the one that called it.
Yeah, that's even worse,
You
yeah.
just had so many of them. It's like,
Well, it's like this is easy, especially so. Oh my God, I just can't imagine. It's that brutal. Nothing
Ford
like,
with the Avalon.
Nothing
I went
like-
through Avalon Bay twice.
no, so did I, but nothing like this.
That's what the 824
Oh, absolutely. It's not even that. People that make it, you know.
Well, no, I remember talking about alcohol. I do remember,
Oh, yeah.
but I was unaware of this.
This file, but I got it.
Got it. Good. Okay, we'll call the commission back into order at 7:21.
So an 824 was completed on September 17th, 2014 by Gary Lawrenson.
Okay, let me just take a look at it.
It's in his staff comments here.
Okay. One Dorn Drive. I'll share this with everyone, but let me just see if there's an area we can. Okay, this is Gary's. Convert former recreation offices and garage space into Dorn Drive to a restaurant. A new detached garage will also be constructed. Let me bring up Gary's comments. It's from the health department. Oh my God, there's a lot in here. Okay. Okay. Comments. The proposal is to convert the existing garage area into the kitchen for the restaurant and the former recreation space into the dining room, including a sit-down bar. Okay, so a bar was contemplated at that point. The building will still house the golf club offices and a small locker room. The restaurant will have seating for approximately 56 people and an outdoor seating area with 24 additional seats. There will be a new entrance for the restaurant and a canopy over the entrance. A new detached garage will be built to store golf equipment, and the ticket booth will be relocated further to the east. The plan is for the town to construct the restaurant to the general specifications as shown on the plans. The town will enter into a lease agreement with the restaurant operator who will modify it based on their needs. A liquor permit will be sought at some point, and that will require a new application to the zoning commission, which I guess is what we're at right now. The new restaurant, including the outside area, will require 48 parking spaces. There are currently 112 available. That leaves, okay, the rest of this is talking about the garage. Attached is my review provided to the Planning Commission, which outlines some policies for the plan of conservation and development. I believe the proposal is generally consistent with the POCD and the coastal management plans as well. Let's see, anything else regarding liquor or zoning? Believe it or not, he does not mention that. Okay, I will. Let's keep this together. Pass that down if people want to review it. Mr. Seft?
Yeah, I'm wondering if I could make a favorable recommendation for this change to the zoning commission, with the understanding that we set some ground rules for the operation of the bar. And I think 9 o'clock is a fairly decent cutoff time.
Okay, we can certainly add that in our comment, in our communication back to them. I have no objection to that. So we'll take that as a motion to refer the text amendment back to the zoning commission with a favorable recommendation and our comments suggesting that a time of 9 o'clock be set.
Unless someone else has a different time. Is 9 okay? Well, I'm just thinking of the neighbors around. They might feel a little bit better. If it closes at 9, gives everybody out by 10.
Okay, we can add that in our communications. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Vexi? Further discussion on the amendment? No?
Okay, now that's with the whole place closing at 9 o'clock.
Or just the bar? Just the bar. Yeah, we're only talking about liquor in this particular,
Okay.
so, yeah. Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Okay, item 2B, text amendment. Add restaurants, drive-through restaurants, and outdoor seating as a permitted use in an LB district. And for those of you that want to look at that map, the LB is that light blue shaded area right about dead center in town. Actually, I think we're sitting in it right now, so to give you a little bit of point of reference. Mr. Urbanski.
Okay, let's see. So section 5.13, oh wait, no, we're talking about, let's see, restaurants. Okay, right. So this is actually part of a 3-application submittal that the Zoning Commission has received. Just a little background. The first is a change of zone. This is regarding the property at the intersection of Barnum Avenue, King Street, and Nichols. I believe it was the former, what was it? Do you remember what it was
Van
called?
Stone Flooring a long time ago.
And stone flooring. It's a beige brick building right on the corner, kind of a U-shaped lot. It's on the north side of Barnum Avenue.
Anderson Building?
I believe so.
That's correct. That's what it is.
Has a little monument sign out front. The plan is Starbucks currently wants to move from the plaza just east to this location to be the sole proprietor at that location. In order to do so, they need to purchase the property behind them. It's a 2-family house. That house will be demolished. They want to change that zone to an LB zone, which the corner lot currently is, and then amend the zoning regulations for to allow for restaurants to be permitted with special case approval from the Zoning Commission in the LB. Currently, there are 9 restaurants that are already in the LB zone. For some reason, restaurants were omitted from being permitted as of right in that zone. I should also mention that the LB district is currently the base zone for the transit-oriented development overlay. The TOD overlay is actually encouraging uses that are activated uses, such as restaurants, cafes with outdoor dining, coffee shops, as a matter of right. So an applicant could come in and choose to operate or move forward with approvals under the LB zone or the TOD, which is much more relaxed in terms of different uses that are allowed. So, in short, the text amendment is for this project, but for the LB zone as a whole. And in my opinion, I think it really does reflect what the POCD as well as the TOD overlay districts are trying to encourage in that district. Create more walkability, more vibrancy, And that's about it. I'm sure there are questions because it's kind of a confusing application and
I'm
Mr.
just
Sem?
thinking, what would be the impact on, I know you said you're going to take down, they want to take down the house behind it. And what's the impact, is there another home further up?
there's
Oh,
two.
And what do they plan to do to give those people some solace from cars driving through the parking lot?
Well, they do have proposed a landscaping buffer basically it's around the entire property. I'm sorry. It's more low-lying shrubs along the front, and then as you get down towards the, probably the last 15, 20 feet of the property, and then all along the back, there's landscaping buffer of, I think it's 6 foot tall arborvitaes to provide some sort of screening from the proposed Starbucks.
And the only other thing I can envision is that's a nasty turn there, and it's always, there's always people that get stopped right in front of the present Starbucks at that light, and, the people are trying to get through and turn right. It's going to... Have we talked to the traffic control division as to whether or not that's going to be an impact on Barnum Avenue and Nichols Avenue?
Well, we did send copies of the application to the fire department, to the or to the police department for comments. We have not received any comments from either department yet as to how this may impact traffic, emergency apparatus, things of that nature. I did suggest to the applicant that a traffic study be done so that the zoning commissioners, when acting on this, will have a better understanding as to how approving this use at this location with an already challenging flow of motor vehicles, how those things are all going to interact. How does, if the drive-through backs up towards the apron where there's an entrance and there are people trying to pull in on Nichols, and I think we've all driven by Dunkin' Donuts where people are backing up onto the street, and that's exactly the most lengthy part of my staff comments for the zoning commission, which I finished maybe around 5 o'clock tonight. Go in depth with just those concerns, all those different conflict points, potentially. I'm kind of getting off the subject a little bit of the text amendment, but it may be making Nichols Avenue entrance only, and on King Street, where it's one way heading north, that be the only in and out exit so that people aren't trying to come out on Nichols and catch a light, that cars are already queuing up.
I was just thinking that, and just looking at it on the satellite view here, and that King Street there, that's traffic light controlled at that point going on too. So at least they're not making left-hand turns. Any turn you make onto 108 is just going to be dangerous, very dangerous.
But until we see that traffic study that's done and get comments back from the police department, I know enough about traffic engineering to be dangerous. I prefer to have the comments from the police department, since they're the ones who will be enforcing a lot of this.
And is there going to be parking in front of the present building? No park, so you can't get out of your car and go into the store and get...
Parking will be in the rear, which is what I recommended when the applicants came in for an initial review. I wanted parking behind the building so that a nice Starbucks facade would be more showcased and more visible from the street, and we're hiding the kind of ugly parking lot towards the rear on a main corridor where we're trying to encourage walkability. The last thing we want, what will discourage walkability, is putting a large parking lot in front of that. So the parking will be in the rear, and I believe it's 22 parking spaces.
Can you envision them pulling out onto King Street versus pulling out?
That's what I suggested. They currently had proposed two-way entrance and exit on Nichols and on King. I recommended entrance only on Nichols, exit and entrance on King.
Yeah.
King is one way north.
Oh,
So they have to go through the residential area,
We'll back up left and then down on Nichols. It'll have to filter them
Yeah.
back up. Yep.
but that's all residential.
yikes.
Just- Mhm.
So King
Does
is
this
one
go
way
through-
going north, so they can't turn south onto that.
I mean, there's been talk about turning King bidirectional too.
Even if it's just beyond that point.
Except then you're on to, exiting onto Barnum Avenue in an
Right.
area that is constantly busy and people turning left to get on King Street, and that's holding them up. Now you'll have to have another light
I
there.
was gonna say you're between lights at that point, right?
Yeah.
You're one, so.
That is literally like the most congested spot they could possibly have thought of.
And DOT actually has, they have these plans. They're currently in the design phase of redesigning that entire intersection. And they're aware of the potential of this project being approved or denied. So they're certainly taking that into account as to how that's all going to work, for what it's worth.
Would there be a public hearing on this at some point?
They're scheduled for the end of this month, 28th.
And-
Zone change, text amendment, special case.
And have the people in that area going north on King Street been made aware of the fact that
I
the
don't
street
know.
is about to get busier?
I don't know. I mean, they notify the abutters, but it's their responsibility only to notify the abutters.
And if they're tearing down one of them, there's fewer butters.
Remove one of them.
Got rid of one of them. Geez, I almost was wondering if they would even closing off that part of King Street and letting them exit through the park. Well, even that's going to cause problems through the shopping center, because then you're going to have people making left-hand turns.
I mean, the traffic division may decide to, where they have that stop so that you don't block the intersection line before Booth Street, they may decide, traffic division may decide, hey, we're going to push this back another 40 feet.
To let people exit and then get out to
Mr. Vigliotti, just use the microphone, please.
What would be the reason for that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm
If they
just
were
kind
gonna
of
push-
playing devil's advocate, push back that do not block intersection so that if they decide to allow ingress and egress on Nichols
Yeah.
Avenue, it may reduce some of that queue up blocking intersection component. I don't know. They may not. They may have no problem with it.
Is that an area where complete streets are being considered? How does that affect, if you've got all this traffic there, how does that affect complete streets?
Well, that was a part of the this application was a part of the complete street design charrette. So that's been taken into consideration with that as well. How does it interact with it? I think, if anything, the complete streets plan, which isn't due to come out until February of 2017, would hopefully pacify any issues that may arise either with this application or any application that's coming down the pipeline in that area. I mean, you've got the new high school coming too. I mean, that's, I think, a part of the reason why DOT really wanted to take a look at this intersection, other than it's a challenge going through currently. So there's some activity going on there, and I think that's part of the reason why they've highlighted it.
We went for the complete streets. They had a list, and you probably went to it too. They showed the areas that are the most accident-prone in the town, and this was it.
Yeah.
Mr. Bexley?
Mr. Chairman, I think we're forgetting something over here. This is a request to change the requirements of the zoning. How zoning handles it is their business. And where it is used is their business.
True. One question that actually, along those lines, I just had a question on is, what is the, I think I need that map back for a second there. What zone, you said they're changing the zone of the house that's to the north of it. Sorry. to expand the LBB. So that is a CA, retail commercial.
No, that's
Is it-
incorrect.
Is that wrong?
Yeah,
Well, okay. Or it's a RS4?
that's it. It's an RS4.
So then the restaurant obviously wouldn't be permitted in an RS4. I was just going to say, why didn't they just push it down instead of...
I mean, they technically don't even have to change the zone. I recommended that they change the zone so that our zoning map is cleaner and so that it's, I mean, you don't need to change a parking facility is permitted in an RS4 zone. I suggested for continuity of the entire site, it's cleaner to have the whole site be one zone, which it's intended to be used for, and the uses would be permitted as of right, assuming the text amendment is adopted.
I mean, consider, one thing that I was thinking of when I was looking at this was that this LB is so small, and it's in the most densely populated, most congested part of our town, and now this would probably, this could encourage others to do a drive-through type of a situation here. That's why I have some concerns about approving or recommending this favorably to the zoning commission. So I'm a little on the fence on this one right now. Mr. Who wanted to speak?
I was going to make a motion to send a favorable recommendation to the zoning commission on this one with the following stipulations that we need to be assured that there's going to be a buffer to the homes to the north, and that we, number two, a review by our police traffic division on the impact of this drive-through window and how it's going to impact King Street, Barnum Avenue, and Nichols Avenue.
Okay, we'll take a motion from Mr. Semp to refer to the zoning, the favorable recommendation with the comments regarding the buffer and for police and traffic analysis of that very tricky intersection. Ms. Patesky?
Just a question. If we do that, will that also require any other development in that LB to also be reviewed for traffic
Well,
as well as buffer so that it's, consistent? Because those, as you said, may also cause some trouble in other development in that LB.
can you say that
Well-
can you say that one more time? I was writing down a previous
Yeah.
condition.
Well, if we do that, will those kind of conditions go to all requests in that LB area? Not just the Starbucks, but any other restaurant or drive-through outdoor seating, so that traffic is reviewed and the buffer zone is required, so that any other other than Starbucks in that zone also have to go through that requirement.
My comment to that is that for any drive-through, I 100% agree, and the zoning regulations require a traffic study to be done. To require that for any restaurant with outdoor seating, I think might be, I don't know. I would have to think about that.
I think it's more the drive-through. That's
Absolutely.
the biggest concern. And I think I like the way you're thinking there is that we actually recommend and come out and say it, that the text regulation should say, have language in there that specifically says that a traffic study must be done on any drive-through in the LBB district. Would that be something that members would see as a good idea? Expanding your thought, Mr. Semp, but saying that for any, because this will affect the entire LBB.
Right.
And it's as we've said here, it's one of the more denser areas there. So I would I don't know if you would agree with it, but say that we actually include text and say that a traffic study will be required for any drive-through proposed in the LBB district.
It's just LB, just so you know.
LB, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you're right. There's two.
There is an LB.
There is an LBB, you're right. You agree? Okay.
So add to the text that a traffic study must be completed for any proposed drive-through in an LB district.
As well as the buffer. Yeah.
and I have, the police department, the, study.
Any preference on buffer, landscape, hardscape, buffer?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
before
Bexley?
we discuss any further, don't we want to have a second?
We probably should.
You have a second?
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Sorry, second by Mr. Vexy, and we're in discussion mode. Yeah, sorry, got a little sidetracked there. It's important stuff. No, actually, I congratulate all members for having this is a very serious discussion on this, and I think it needs a serious discussion. So this is very good. Okay.
My other suggestion was, is there a preference for the type of buffer? And do we want to get specific to where it's a landscaped buffer? Is it a combination of a fence and landscape? Is it one or the other?
I think that the site plan and the area that it's in and the conditions that are there will determine how the buffers will be.
Has to be consistent with the,
I'm just thinking of Burger King, when you drive through that drive-through up there. They have a fence and they do have shrubbery
Yeah.
that protects the home on the other side of that drive-through. So maybe a combination of the two, fencing and shrubbery.
And if I may add, just for noise, maybe a certain distance, even if it's 5 feet, just so that, you know, you don't have the car fumes and you don't have the car noise coming, you know, if your house happens to be close by.
And there currently is a buffer requirement for things just like that, and I believe it's, can't remember if it's 5 feet or 10 feet, but it's one of the two.
To be consistent with the plan of development and everything, whatever that is.
It is not for us to design the features. It's up to the zoning commission to define that. Most of the stuff is in there, you know, if you read the zoning carefully.
Well, even in the plan of conservation and development, there's areas where we're supposed to come up with designs for the area. In like certain districts would look better if it had a seashore kind of landscape and design. I think that some of that is in the plan of conservation
That
and
is
development.
fine, but you must always remember, we do not have the authority to define that. We have to pass that authority to the people that have it, which is zoning.
But I think we can give them guidance.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, I think we'll handle it as a buffer to be determined by zoning when they do the site plans, if that's okay.
Or any abutting residential properties.
Yes. Further discussion on the amendment? If not, all in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, carries 5-0. Okay, item 2C, text amendment, reduce the minimum number of units from 10 to 8 for residence apartments, and this one will require some discussion, I'm sure.
All right, everybody get their thinking caps on for this one.
Get ready.
Okay. So section 5.3 is a regulation in the zoning regulations that basically states any residential development of 10 units or greater is subject to section 5.3. 5.3 was, I believe, from what my predecessor told me, was instituted in the early 60s in the town of Stratford, and it basically gave a bedroom cap, and they referred to these bedrooms as equivalents in the zoning regulations. There were 100 equivalents given to all the 13 neighborhoods in the town of Stratford. I believe there's 13, right? 13 neighborhoods, I believe. At that point, they said, their zoning regulations says, no more than 605.5 units I'm sorry, equivalents are allowed townwide. So, for example, in lordship, there has all their equivalents, their 100 equivalents, were all gobbled up in 1981, the last 10 unit or more development was, those equivalents were used in, I believe, 1981, and there has not been one 10 unit or greater development since that point. Other various neighborhoods have had the same thing, and currently there are no more equivalents left in the town of Stratford. So that's kind of the background of it. All the 10 unit developments have all, there are no equivalents to accommodate 10 unit developments or greater. So, this regulation that is being proposed is to reduce the minimum requirement of units subject that would, it's basically a threshold that would trigger section 5.3 from 10 units or more to 8 units or more. Looking at it from face value, it's technically making the regulation more restrictive, because now any 8-unit development would be subject to 5.3, this bedroom cap or threshold. Not the problem. A kind of sub-concern of this is that, well, the zoning regulations allow for 1 families and 2 families. The RM zone, which is our multifamily zone, allows for 1 families and 2 families. There is nothing in between for 3s to 9. So, I mean, the reason for this, I mean, it's hard to exactly say what the proposal, why the reason of this is. I mean, if you follow any of the zoning commission applications, there's been I believe, and it's not stated in any of these proposals here, there was a highly contested application for 10 units on a property, and the residents seemed to be happy with there was only 8 proposed. Well, the developer said, okay, we'll do 8. Hearing closed, project denied, they're going to come back for 8. That zone doesn't allow for 8 because there's no in between. It's either 1, 2, or 10. So that is why I believe we have this text amendment here before us. Like I said, I mean, it really is making the zoning and section 5.3 more restrictive, because it's subjecting potentially more developments to this bedroom cap. I've never, in all my studies, all my master's work and writing of zoning regulations and drafting of zoning regulations in my previous job, have ever come across a regulation similar to section 5.3 in Stratford zoning regulations. I've even called some of my master's professors, director of urban planning program, University of Florida. They have never heard of this. I think it was 5.3 was devised and implemented as, I think, a way to keep development manageable for the neighborhood school system, and I think also to adhere to the planning philosophy at the time in the 60s, which was to spread development out, you're allowed to do 100 here, 100 here, 100 here, 100 here, which was sprawl. That was encouraged then. Philosophy has evolved since then, and we are now trying, and many urban planners, and I kind of agree with it, is that we need to concentrate our resources and focus our density in particular areas. So that's just background and a little bit of my opinion on it, but That's section 5.3 in a nutshell.
Okay, who wants to lead off this debate? Um,
It is confusing. This is what Gary Lawrenson brought a few meetings ago with the map.
Yes, he had that when we did sort of the handoff, and there were the neighborhoods that, some of which were named after schools that don't exist anymore, and so on. Yeah, this is what this is all coming with.
If this is a regulation that is antiquated, should we consider maybe changing it?
It depends on who you're talking to.
Ah.
I think, well, someone who does not want any more residential development may say 5.3 is kind of a good thing. People who are for residential development may say, yeah, we should get rid of 5.3. The third view is that, okay, so we're not allowing developments of 10 units or greater. How can I get around? There are no more bedroom equivalents. How can I get around that? Affordable housing. In my opinion, 5.3 encourages affordable housing in the town of Stratford, which it's a necessity. I think every town has to have affordable housing. They can be done well. But currently we are encouraging that type of development. And 5.3 is the, I think, impetus to that. I think that's, as you've seen, we've seen the bedroom equivalents dwindle down to the point where there are no more left. I think we've started to see an uptick in different types of development applications that have become more frequent.
I'm a little confused. This would have no impact at all on, let's say, up by the Jehovah's Witness up here, if someone wanted to build units up there, and they wanted to build greater than 10 units, that would be no impact on this particular, on 5.3.1.
I'm not sure where the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Across from the line?
And the police station.
Where? What street? Which street is it?
Main Street.
Just north Main?
Yes.
No, I mean, all the equivalents are spoken for. There are no more developments of 10 or more that are available. Even though the application that wanted 10, that is interested in getting 8, which I believe this is for, even though they don't have approval for it yet because it's in the court system and has not been officially, those units are technically still spoken for and available for that development. So even if you were to give a favorable recommendation and the zoning commission were to adopt this, unless 5.3 was abolished, there would be no more 10, there still aren't any 10 unit or more, 8 unit or more developments allowed because there are no more bedrooms.
So what are they trying to accomplish by submitting this amendment then?
Getting their 8-unit development project probably approved
So
that they
okay,
are now eligible to go under section 5.3 because the base zone does not allow for 8 units. It only allows 1 and 2.
And that
Or
would
10.
also not allow them, to go with an affordable housing.
Say that again?
They wouldn't go for an affordable housing, which could be 70 units.
It's potential, if this, I don't know. I don't know what they'll do. If this doesn't pass, maybe. Yeah.
Let's just walk this through. We refer it back to zoning passes it. Would the applicant then be entitled to build an 8-unit development or an 8-bedroom development?
I could not deny an application to go before the zoning commission. It still requires a special case application,
Right.
as it normally would currently under 10, except now the threshold begins at 8. So it could, yes. Because currently I can't take an application for 8 for that zone.
But you would have to if it were affordable housing 70.
Well, affordable housing changes, I mean, just take the zoning regulations and
Throw
throw
it
them
out.
away, because it's not subject to any of that.
So it's kind of like an option to the affordable housing.
I'm not sure if
In
I
other words, a
understand.
developer could consider 8 houses instead of 10 or more.
And a lot of moving parts with this one.
I'm not even sure what questions to ask. This is
Yeah.
a tricky one.
I mean, because there are so many other incidental issues that go along with this. Is 5.3 antiquated? Do we remove that? If we do remove that, do we have to change? We have to restructure how the base zones are set up to accommodate for that gap between 1 and 2 and 10 or more. There's nothing that says higher density zones like an RM1 multifamily zone allows 3 to 5 units, or 3 to 4, 4 to 6. There's kind of that no in between, so we kind of get those polar extremes of either not enough or too much.
Do other communities have something that, gives some kind of regulations for the 3 to 5, 5 to 10? They do.
Yep.
So we could maybe look at some of those options and maybe adopt one of those as opposed to the 5.3.1? Is that
That's
also an option?
It certainly is an option, and in my opinion, it's something I think that should be pursued. Does that change? I mean, and that's a lot of work. It's restructuring all of the base zones. It's a lot of. If I had the time, I would love to rewrite the zoning regulations to accommodate that. There's not enough time in the day currently to do that, so it's expensive to hire consultants to redo those regulations and to do them specifically tailored to the town of Stratford. You can't just, not that you're suggesting this, but you can't just take the multifamily zoning from Fairfield and drop it in Stratford or Bridgeport or or Milford. Every town's a little different, so.
If we were to send an unfavorable recommendation back to the zoning commission, do we have to list reason why?
I'm not sure
Not
too, but
generally, but I mean, I have to, and you see him whenever we do one of these, is, we'll communicate whether we send it back favorable, unfavorable, no recommendation, and usually we say our reasons. I suppose we're
Well, is it-
stumped, it doesn't really cut it.
Is it fair to say that the builders are looking for a unfair advantage to get into these neighborhoods to build 8 instead of 10 homes that are going to be abutting a neighborhood, and maybe those neighborhood people don't want that?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I think it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to some residents, they'll probably say, no, we don't want any development.
Right.
We don't want 8 units in our neighborhood. We want it to be a park or a dog park or whatever happens to be.
Was this number negotiated out, or was this just like, okay, well, somebody said it at a public hearing, I'll call their bluff?
Was it negotiated down by the zoning commission, you mean?
Between the attorney and, say, the neighbors or something like that?
It was done at the public hearing. It was based on feedback from the commissioners, feedback from the residents. I mean, it seemed that the residents they don't want this in their neighborhood, but if it's going to happen and it's conforming to the zoning regulations, we want 8 instead of 10.
So smaller development.
Correct. But 5.3 did not allow for smaller,
Unless we pass this. Then it would,
unless the zoning commission passes
Yes.
this.
I mean, part of me says when you have the situation, instead of the, the hammer approach, which we have a lot of times here, where there's developers trying to force things, if they were able to come to some accommodation, it's almost like this is somewhat, I feel like they should be encouraged to come to something.
Chris, I think your natural reaction is say, well, you can say, we can write a favorable recommendation, an unfavorable recommendation, or
No recommendation.
no recommendation, because, and that's kind of the feeling I'm starting to get. I'm not sure. Maybe it's one way or the other. I don't know. But that says something as well, I think.
I mean, we could say no recommendation. You guys, the zoning commission, is a little bit closer to this than we are, as far as, and actually in the comments that came back from the regional, it says there's no regional impact. I mean, it's probably a negligible impact townwide one way or the other, a difference of 2 units. It's not paving the way for gigantic things. It's not overly restricting. It's modifying it. It's not exactly a massive change in the regulation.
And it's actually, face value, although it may allow this one project to move forward, it's essentially making the zoning regulations more restrictive.
So that the requirement would go from 10 to 8 going forward. You couldn't build 10 if you wanted to. Well, there's nowhere to put 10 anyway, though.
Bingo.
But then you'd have the option of making 8.
But there's still no bedrooms available.
I see. Interesting. I don't know. It's like,
What do you think, members? Any thoughts?
Thinking caps.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we send this on to the zoning commission with no recommendation.
Is there a second? If not, I will second that. I think that's a wise and prudent move. I think we refer to it without recommendation, and we'll include some commentary as to our feelings on this. So, any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Let's see if we got something easy.
Good job. That's not an easy one.
Okay, any campsite reviews?
No.
Any correspondence?
We do have the East Campus sewer. Is that an appropriate time for this?
Sure.
Let's see if I can find that stuff here. Oh, did that 824 make its way back? I want to make sure that gets back into the file.
It's a good point. Who's got the 824 on Short Beach?
Part of it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, don't lose that.
Thank you. Okay, here it is. So, this is regarding the East Campus, the 42-acre East Campus Lordship Boulevard site. 2 months ago, the developer, Stratford Development, came to the Planning Commission requesting a drawdown of $34,000 from the total $38,000 sewer bond that was posted in relation to the project. The Planning Commission, based on feedback from the town engineer saying that a substantial portion of the work had been completed, he agreed with the $34,000 drawdown, leaving $4,000 left on the bond. I received a request from Stratford Development Company requesting the remaining $4,000 for the sewer improvements, and I did receive an email. Did it end up over there? Because it's not in my packet anymore.
I don't think so.
There we go. Okay, here it is. I've got it. So once I received the request, I followed up with the town engineer asking if he was okay with, is he satisfied with the work that was done for the sewer improvements? He responded to me. I'll just read you the whole email. Jay, we had talked to the sewer contractor about getting an as-built drawing for the sanitary sewer. We have not received this yet. The contractor has taken care of the other issues we had regarding the sanitary sewer. Therefore, I recommend that the Planning Commission can release the bond conditional upon the sewer as-built drawing being submitted to the engineering department when completed. So, the town engineer is comfortable with the drawdown of the remaining $4,000 based on an as-built being submitted.
Okay, so you're asking, just so this is clear, the motion you're looking for is to draw down the bond to $4,000?
The remaining $4,000 for the completion of the work.
Make sure I get this written out right.
Subject to receiving the maps.
Correct.
Draw down to $4,000.
The remaining
The remaining $4,000. 4,000, subject to receipt of maps. Okay, can I have a motion to that effect?
So
Mr.
moved.
Vexi, is there a second? Mr. Vigliotti? Any further discussion on the item? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. Anything new on the Town Plan of Conservation and Development that anybody wants to bring up? I do not have anything.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
At the last meeting when we had Janet Robinson, Dr. Robinson, we had asked for a capacity study or has anything come?
I haven't received anything. Let me just see. What specifically did we ask for? Sorry.
It's in the minutes.
I'm just going to grab the number of, okay. Okay, the student capacity of each school in town. No, we have not received that. So we put down a request to follow up with the superintendent's office.
Is it possible to take that one step further and actually ask them to do what is in the plan of development, which is a, what did they call it?
Enrollment and space utilization.
Yeah, an enrollment and space utilization study.
I'm sorry, I was writing something else down.
An enrollment and space utilization study.
This has been done, and you want to,
No, to my knowledge, it hasn't been done, but it is in the plan of development.
As one of the action items?
Yeah.
Okay.
so just an inquiry as if any progress has been done.
Like to see them do it.
Or, yeah, and then. see
If they
what
haven't
else.
done it. It's number 8 on page 13. Recommend the Board of Education complete an enrollment and space utilization study of all schools to determine current and projected facility needs. So while they're doing the capacity, I think it would behoove us to look at the entire school system.
That is one of the action steps. I think we covered an awful lot that night, and maybe we just weren't didn't ask for, or at least maybe she didn't pick up on it. But we could follow up on that, ask them about it, and see if we can get some action done on that. That would be a good thing to have.
Thank you.
Anything else on that item? Okay, item 7, status of research on medical marijuana regulations and methadone clinics. I've had a few discussions on this over the preceding month, and let me just in discussion, Jay and I spoke actually about it again this morning, and initially my thoughts were to form a group specifically to look into this, and I'm actually thinking that I think what would be better to do to avoid replication of effort, and everybody's schedules are pretty tight, is that we actually meet in joint session with the Zoning Commission to discuss this and to invite people to present information to us on the item. I'm afraid that if we have a subgroup look at it, then the Planning Commission, the rest of us that aren't part of that are going to want to hear it. The Zoning Commission members that aren't part of it are going to want to hear it. And it might be easier if we have a group, sometimes a group together can learn more than individually. So what I'm going to ask members for, and I know each of you have varying interests in this, I know some different opinions, is who you, and not necessarily the name of a person, but a type of a person or position that you think would be important to hear, for lack of a better term, testimony on how we should approach this. I know it's been tried in a few other towns, or it's being developed in a few other towns. Perhaps somebody that is administering such facility in some other town, maybe somebody from the Board of Health. But what I'd like to do is set up a couple evenings where we could meet together and schedule 2 or 3 presenters to come and talk to us and answer our questions and share their experiences. And then after we've heard that, we'd probably be in a better position to actually start making some judgments on that. So I'm not going to ask you for them tonight. I'll send an email out to you and to the remaining alternates this week. It's what I'm suggesting. I'll also share it with the Zoning Commission. So start thinking about that, who you think would be a resource that we could ask, and then we can start the process of lining up their schedules with ours and actually take some concrete action on this one. Okay? All right, moving on. Any erosion or sediment controls plan issues?
No.
The Greenway, Mr. Vexi.
We didn't have a meeting this month. In fact, what we are waiting for is a response back from the police department for the layout on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Hope to see that at the next meeting.
Okay. Item B, 9B, complete streets. I hope a lot of members had a chance to go through it. My congratulations, Mr. Bansky, for setting that up. It actually was, I was able to go down there, spend some time with him in one of the later sessions, and I have to say I was very impressed with the amount of research and preparation they had for that. It's actually quite different from what I thought they were going to propose. So I'll open it up. Any members want to comment, or you want to comment on anything that was shared there? Or?
Well, I also wanted to thank Commissioner Watson for him spreading the word and really helping drive
Yes,
the
thank you,
numbers
sir.
there, because, as I've probably mentioned before, without local input, these plans sometimes, these consultants just regurgitate the same thing over and over without any specificity to the town. So great job on getting people there. It makes a big difference. Yeah, I mean, I had a follow-up phone call with the consultant today in the regional planning agency, and they all felt that it went really well. I mean, obviously, we would love to have more people come, but we had maybe 160 specific comments from residents on all the different interventions that were proposed, and that's great. I mean, that's excellent. So we've got some really great ideas, and currently they are working on an existing condition survey for the half-mile radius of the train station. They will be presenting me with the existing condition survey, as well as some refined design concepts with a lot of the comments that we received during the Complete Streets design charrette. And that will kind of be one document that we will be reviewing with the Technical Advisory Committee, which is made up of town officials, as well as the Community Advisory Committee, which involves various stakeholders. So I'm expecting that report, I believe it's the end of July. So moving forward on that, and we're actually scheduled to be finishing that project 3 to 4 months early, which is great. That means we can start design over the winter, hopefully, and begin our first pilot implementation site next spring, which is really great.
Yeah, I would just like to echo the chairman's comments. I did attend the Complete Streets, and I'd like to thank Mr. Hibansky for doing such a good job with that presentation, and Mr. Watson as well. And also the consultants, I thought they did a very professional job and were willing to listen to the various people who came. And I think those who came were excited and to be asked and to be involved. I would just like to make one comment. I understand in the capital improvement program there is some funding to redo or do some renovations to Knowlton Street and Linden Avenue, which is also within the Complete Streets area. My suggestion would be that, if possible, I know Complete Streets, all their suggestions are not done, but at least maybe they can be considered within that project so that we're not, after we do the project, we're not ripping up the project all over again.
Do you know who's leading that?
I don't know, I just know it's in the
Works.
CIP. I'm going to assume the Public Works Department.
Do you know if there's any legs to that project currently? Is it, or is it just kind of something that's been proposed? And
Oh, no, well, it has funding.
Oh.
So it has, don't quote me, I think it's $100,000. I really don't know the amount. But it is in the CIP, so I'm assuming it's under Public Works.
I'll see if I can have Alta follow up with Public Works and see kind of where it's at and how we can weave it into the plan.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on Complete Streets? Okay, item 9C, Coastal Resiliency Plan. I know we had a lengthy presentation last month, and I sent out an email request for any feedback on it. And I actually asked to keep it up on the meeting since we really didn't have a chance to discuss it, and it was a lot of material. And so I wanted to make sure we had a chance to actually talk about it a little bit. What's amazing to me is the amount of work involved in bringing a plan like this into reality. At the same time, how necessary it probably would be. I was out in Milford over the weekend, and I was talking to some people who were part of the Coast Guard Auxiliary building right outside of Milford Center, and they were saying how, almost half of their place was flooded out during Sandy, and that there were always what they're trying to do is some work down there actually to protect that area, because it is very low when you get down, right in that neighborhood, to avoid that from happening in the future. And it's like, okay, well, that's something we're talking about in Stratford at the same time. We had an interesting talk about that. So, again, I'm not sure what the best way is. I know, why don't you give us, what are they looking for, or where are they? Can you bring us up to speed on anything that's happened in the last month from their perspective?
Well, they're actually waiting for, the last thing they're waiting for is any feedback from the Planning Commission that they can implement into their final draft so that the final draft can be submitted to the Planning Commission and be adopted very soon. They are hoping for I believe they're trying to get on, well, they're not getting on next month's agenda, because today was a deadline and they haven't received our comments yet, obviously. So it would probably be August. That's their goal, to actually have a formal coastal resilience plan adopted for the town.
Mr. Watson?
Question.
Sure.
They had said that they were going to put out their information on our website. Oh, sorry. They had said that they would post their information, their presentation on our website. And I've checked several times. I can't find it if it is out there.
Once it's done, it will be posted on the website. We don't want to be posting drafts on the website currently until it's complete.
I was really seriously, I went looking for it. I would love to comment on what they were doing because I think some of it was hard work and it actually is something we could live by.
I would be more than happy to loan you my draft hard copy. No, it's not that bad. It's that, and it's 8.5 by 11, and I have no problem loaning it to you. Just come in tomorrow, and you can have it over the weekend.
Okay, thank you.
And you can write in it. And all my notes are in there as well. So, but yeah, I mean, we talked about putting some initial stuff up on the website, and we just thought it was too preliminary until it was before all of our eyes, and with our comment, and all of your comments.
I mean,
Did-
go ahead. I was going to say, the one thing that sticks in my mind, and I know they were talking about it, is that, you know, through the plan of conservation and development, we've identified the area that we view as the area for growth and, you know, future economic development, if you will. And that's the area that's the most vulnerable. And unfortunately, I think one thing that I do think is not an option is to completely retreat out of that area. It's not like, you know, we can, you know, push all the way north and stay out of that. So the other options of trying to protect and divert of their any potential floodwaters and so on become very important there. So of the three, that one I don't think is it maybe in some places you will, and I think the area that has taken caught the federal eyes is also the residential, especially down by like West Beach Boulevard and so on like that. That those are the areas where they're now saying, okay, you got to go a little bit further in, or we're not going to allow reconstruction within the certain areas there. But you know, going back in the the thing where town hall becomes beachfront property, those particular maps, that's going to be extremely difficult to maintain. And plus, we're already looking at, if things go the way we hope, eventually the Army engine plant coming back online, that's going to be right in the crosshairs. Now, the Army engine plant is also an opportunity because we're pretty much going to assume that they're going to start from zero at that point. So instead of retrofitting a neighborhood or a part of our town to accommodate this, you can actually take this and start and build it the right way. So I think that's one area of focus that we want them to maintain is while they're coming up with recommendations, and we're still in this interregnum between while we're waiting for state and feds and whoever else to get in on that thing, is, that's an area where you should probably take a look at right now and have a plan ready so that when we're ready to develop it, they have it already and say, okay, let's just implement it and build it the way it should be to protect us from whatever type of storms would come our way. Okay. Anybody else want to comment on what we saw last month?
I mean, I'll just reiterate what Chris said, or Commissioner Silhavy, that, my main comments, other than some little typo stuff and clarification on some terms, really were in the implementation and action chapters. First and foremost was where we're recommending people to go, obviously. We're not going to tell people to completely retreat, but maybe redefine that district. They actually recommended that. I'm actually encouraging them to be a bit more specific as to maybe where they think that realignment may go. They may not want to jump in and probably will say, well, that's a study. You need, that's a full-on study, but I'm really trying to push the envelope a little about of some of the information we can get out of them in this plan here. Really more about specifics. They mention a lot about reconstruction or construction of seawalls to protect certain areas of town. And I'm trying to get them to give us ballpark heights. I know that what they'll probably say is, okay, well, 3 feet will give you this protection and cost this much. 6 feet will give you this, will protect this many homes and it costs this much. But it would be helpful to have that ballpark as we're kind of drawing a budget together and trying to looking at funding that's available. We'll see what they say. And then the last was in the project matrix towards the very end. There's a cost and priority section that are currently blank. I'm assuming that they are going to fill those sections in, but I wanted to make sure that that was part of it. And then something that was talked about and didn't really seem to make its way into the resilience plan was how we can integrate the greenway as part of the resilience plan. How can a greenway or an elevated greenway potentially serve two purposes? One, a recreational asset to the community that winds along the coast into maybe partially some of the wetlands or on the border of the northern border of our wetlands around the economic development industrial area. It's elevated, so it'll also serve as a protection berm or a dike to protect some of that area where we're telling people to go, and we can't ask them to leave or try to relocate them. So that was one thing that, I think it's big project, lots of money, but there's money out there, and it's a kind of a home run project. It connects residents to the coast, as well as it protects our largest tax base in the town. So that's a recommendation I'm asking them to put in there. Other than that, I think they did a great job.
One thing, I just saw a picture in here and it triggered something I was hearing on the radio. In New York City, and maybe this is something that they can look at, in the area like the Rockaways, which is a really low, they're practically islands. I've actually been out there once before. They're changing about the way they do the coastal evacuation routes, and trying to consider, instead of trying to jam everybody going in one direction, that they had changed something in there where they went in various directions to get people away from the coast, and anticipating that when these things happen, like with a hurricane approaching, it's a short amount of time to get a lot of people out in the same thing. And Lord knows if you ever had something like this, you'd be moving an awful lot of people up north really quickly. So I don't know if it's in here. I haven't had a chance to look for it, but if they could consider how we designate coastal evacuation routes in the case for a flood, and make sure that we're up to standards and what's being proposed now and what's the easiest way to move a lot of people out in a short period of time if ever that became necessary. Okay.
Mr. Hibansky, if I could also see that, because it is kind of hard to comment on a coastal resiliency plan that you really haven't seen. We've seen, the PowerPoint presentation, but so if I could see that, my only comment would be, since I haven't seen it, I would hope that the WPCA is one of the first things that they plan on protecting. So.
That's a priority one project in the plan. And it's 90% protected. There's just one vulnerable area, and it's kind of connecting the two dots on either end. But I think that's number one priority in the plan.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Any members' concerns, comments, complaints? I have one. Probably more of a zoning thing, but I'll bring it up anyway since I have your attention. The traffic island between Cut Spring Road and Main Street. I don't believe we ever allowed signs there.
Cut Spring and
Main, like out near Cut Spring Deli.
Yep.
I know we allowed it on like West Broad Green and Paradise Green, but there were an awful lot, and the other day there were so many of them, I couldn't see to make a left-hand turn. They were all on top of each other. So
I will get the zoning enforcement officer out
if you
there.
can take a look or remind, I know, by the way, members, just be aware our meetings are now on YouTube, so, your comments accordingly. So if anyone's listening out there, that's not an area that's appropriate for signs, and any areas that are appropriate for signs, I would hope that people would keep them out of the way of traffic. We don't need any dangerous situations arising. So, all right, I've gotten off my soapbox for the minute. Anything else from members?
Well, I would just, we like to walk around, to get exercise, and there are some crosswalks where people don't slow down, and, so you're always yielding the right of way even though you're in the crosswalk. So I know there are certain parts of town where they have signs saying to yield to, and I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be better if we had those at every crosswalk. I don't know how feasible that would be, but something like that. To get the signage out there and get it in people's heads so that they're it's a little bit more of a reflexive act, rather than expecting me to, dart back to the curb
Yeah.
to avoid getting run over.
Is there anyone in particular that?
After you go through the green and you're crossing, I guess it's Huntington Road, coming from Paradise Green,
Okay.
and then go, that would be that's usually the.
Like near Zima's funeral home? That type
Yeah, and then you go, yeah.
of-
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, can we ask maybe the traffic authority or police department to check that out?
What's the,
It's Paradise Green Place and
Well,
Huntington
well, it's
Road.
actually
No?
the block beyond Azima's.
The block up, that's Paradise Green Place,
Is that?
Or
the block up.
and Park Street, that area too?
Park in Huntington.
Okay.
Park in Huntington?
Yeah.
Park at Huntington. And in addition to that, I can just mention that maybe it's something that they may want to consider making it more comprehensive as opposed to maybe just this
Yeah.
section.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Yep.
and I'm not 100% sure of the avenue, if there's a traffic commission that approves where signs go. I know that's what most municipalities do.
Yeah, we do have a traffic authority. They do some of the signage, but the police they have a heavy involvement in that one way or the other.
So depending on what feedback we get, I mean, the planning commission could draft a letter of recommendation to that commission suggesting whatever conditions or whatever we would like. So
Great.
we'll see what they say.
And if you want to write something up, send it to me. We can put it as part of an official communication.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would just like, on signs, I think even at West Broad and Paradise Green, which are where all the community signs are, it really is getting to be sign pollution. There are an awful lot of signs. And I think everybody is putting out a lot of the lawn signs, not just during political season, but no matter what they're doing, and they seem to be everywhere. And I'm not sure if there are some regulations or something we can do as far as enforcing that it has to be in maybe 2 or 3 locations, all these signs, or possibly looking into something of a digital sign, so that all of these signs that are there, all these A-frames, can be consolidated into one digital sign that flips every 30 seconds or something.
Well, I think the initial thing is, and it was one of those ones where, I could see the logic of it, but sometimes I was wondering how it actually came out in practice. We did do a revision of the sign regulation about, a year or 2 ago. And it was less restrictive, but I want to make sure it might be worth looking. There is a limit on there, and there's a time limit. There was I can't remember what exactly the section of it is.
Can't be posted more than 4 weeks before the nonprofit in-town event is being promoted, and it has to be removed within 48 hours after. And it's the way the regulation is written. It says that any sign, debris, or litter, if a sign is destroyed before the event or it's not removed after, is going to have to pay for removal and disposal fees, subject to whatever the Public Works Department tells them that's how much it costs to be removed.
And I think maybe the first thing we do is we take a look and make sure that that is still actually being followed, that it's not being abused. And I don't know, I can't remember how we handle that. Is that first come, first serve on that one? But there is a maximum amount of it.
Is there? I'd have to read it again.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing the maximum, but
I think
there
there
certainly might be.
Positive there was a maximum number, because we didn't want to, but I think it is getting out of control right now. As far as the ones on people's lawns, I know a lot of the schools do them. I saw the other day, I guess all the Bunnell grads got one that says Bulldog graduate. I could tell you the political signs, there actually were regulations on them, when you can make them, how big you can make them. And I think somebody went to court and found they were unconstitutional because of a free speech item. It's your own personal property. You could do pretty much whatever you want, although I think the parties generally adhere to the size requirements, though. But the timing of it, they says, if I want to put up vote for X in 2020, I suppose I could put it up for the next 8 years. But I don't know how you control that one. But I think right now the big one is the West Broad, and maybe I've always thought maybe it's even just being an awareness of the civic organizations, that making them aware of what is the regulations. Because you see 5 signs up, you're like, okay, I guess everybody can put their signs up, and before you know, we're up to 15 or something like that. So I think we might have to do some communication, maybe in that newspaper that goes out from the Stratford community. We might need to be more open or vocal about what the rules are for West Broad and Paradise Green, because I don't want to see that turn into a sloppy area. I mean, that's where people come to. It's nice to communicate. One would think in the age of entertainment, there actually was an article out there, is 2016 the end of the lawn sign for politics? I was reading that the other day. Because by and large, you can do so much with other means. But it is important to support our community. On the other hand, we're trying to balance the way our town looks as well. So I think we can take a look at that, and we might need to revisit that regulation at some point. Anything else, members? Okay, next meeting is scheduled for July 19th. We'll keep in touch with you on that. And it's going to be away, let me know. Please do send me your thoughts on the speakers for joint session on the medical marijuana, methadone items, and maybe we can start getting that organized before the summer's out. Okay? Take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Vigliotti, second. Mr. Senft, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Carries unanimously. We're out here at 8:42. Good meeting, everyone.
Plus. Got a lot done. A lot done. I would love it.
There you go.